Hey everybody, welcome back to Fist-Dented Christians. Dustin and DJ here. This week we're gonna kind of talk about rejection. DJ and I have some things going on in our personal lives that we're trying to accomplish, and they involve other people, so it's kind of up to others whether they accept or reject what we're offering. So we thought it'd be a good topic because we've been in it for a few weeks now. So I'll kind of turn it over to DJ. We wrote a list down of uh, kind of some talking points or whatever on facing rejection.
Thanks, man. Hey, everybody. Welcome to our weekly podcast. So we've been eating some breakfast and just hanging out and talking a little bit more about rejection and everybody knows rejection, right? I
Yep.
mean, everybody experiences rejection, sometimes on a large scale and sometimes on maybe a smaller, like a daily scale where, somebody doesn't call you back or whatever. But it's an inevitable part of life,
Yep.
and it's something that we have to deal with every day. And when we were talking earlier, we were talking a little bit about kind of the layers of rejection, right? So, one layer could be something that happens that we brush off,
Yep.
something that doesn't really impact us, like, oh, okay, whatever, like they can't meet for lunch, not a big deal,
Yeah.
um, the second layer of rejection is something that kind of impacts us to the point where we have an emotional response to it,
Yeah.
right? So, hey, like I was really hoping that you would, acknowledge me in a way, kind of what my expectation was, right?
Yep.
Or I really, whether that be with some of the things we'll talk about here, whether that be with another person or whether that be in a career. I didn't get that raise, so now I'm really frustrated and angry because I've worked so hard.
Yep.
And then the third layer, the deepest layer, I think, of rejection is something that kind of rewrites our narrative of ourselves. And usually that's the kind of rejection that I think, and again, this is just theory, but that's the kind of rejection that I think happens when we're younger. That sort of becomes our identity, the way that we look at ourselves,
Yeah.
and that's much more damaging. So when we start talking about the kinds of rejection, not so much how it makes us feel, but the kinds of rejection. It could be, and you'll talk about this, Dustin. It could be in personal relationships. It could be with
Yeah.
DJ and his efforts to try to get an agent to represent his novel. It could be in marriage relationships or even just intimate dating relationships. There's rejection with ourselves.
Yep.
There's rejection in our careers. There's a rejection with our family, with our friends. And again, it's inevitable. It's going to happen whether we like it or not. And I think that today's kind of topic is about trying to figure out, just to make clear what it does to us and how that can impact us in a negative way. And also, how can we can turn it around and be more positive about it,
Yeah.
right? So why don't we start with Dustin? Why don't you tell us a little bit about, or share with everybody, what specifically has been going on with you as it relates to this topic just the last few weeks?
Okay. Yeah, so I've been dealing with loneliness for a while now because I'm a single guy and I've only had one girlfriend in my life, and that was a train wreck of a relationship. And for a long time, it kind of bothered me that I was single, but never more so than, it'd be nice to have a girlfriend or a wife, but whatever. But lately, it's been really weighing on me. So I've tried online dating in the past and it didn't work out. But I thought, well, I'll give it a chance again because, all of my friends are in relationships and I don't really do church and all that. So online dating is most likely the best option for me. So a couple weeks ago, I reactivated my Match.com account and started sending out messages. And in the 2 weeks that I've been on Match, I've sent out 15 or so messages and haven't gotten any response. And that's hard to deal with because, like I said, the past couple times that I had done Match or eHarmony, I would send out messages, and I'd only have to send out 4 or 5 messages before I heard back from a couple women. So now all of a sudden it's like, well, what the hell's going on that now I'm not getting any responses, and the negative, pessimist, low self-esteem, depressed person in me says, well, everything you think about yourself is true. You're too ugly, you're too fat, you're too stupid, you don't have enough accomplished, so you're just not a desirable partner. Um,
So that sounds like it's kind of rejection on all three of those levels that I
yeah,
said. Like, well, maybe not the brushing it off, but I know that you're trying to brush it off,
yeah,
kind of like, but it impacts you daily because you're
yep,
starting to have emotions about it,
yep,
and then it's kind of it's rewriting slash confirming your narrative about yourself,
yes,
right? So
yep,
it's kind of like the triple trifecta.
yeah, yeah. So in the past or even currently, when things get too difficult, I would just immediately stop. And I'm just like, okay, I can't handle it, so I'm done. So with this, I'm trying to push through. So like I said, it's been a couple weeks, and I just force myself each day to go on to Match and at least send one message. Some days it's one, some days it's three. I think three's been the most. Um, but yeah, it is getting to the point where I think I'm gonna have to step away for a couple weeks because I can't deal with the rejection all the time. I've certainly dealt with it longer than I would have had I not been pushing myself. So then I'm trying to, in the midst of that, I'm trying to actually be happy with the fact that I've pushed myself farther than I normally would. So that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
So out of that rejection, at least there's some sort of growth. But yeah, it's hard to soldier on. And
Yeah.
you and I were talking earlier, and I think one of the reasons that I quit so frequently on things, I have this theory that hope hope is what gives us the energy to continue on. And if so, like in dating, if I never try, then I can have hope that someday it'll happen. But if I try dating and continually fail at it, that hope is gone, and then it confirms everything that I thought was true. So with this Match thing, it's getting to the point where I'm starting to lose that hope because I mean, and I know it's only been 2 weeks, but for me that's a long time to try this.
Because you're thinking about it all the time.
Yeah, yeah, it's just a nonstop cycle in my head. Um, so yeah, it's like if I step away from Match and I don't pursue a relationship, there's always some hope that somehow magically or miraculously it'll happen. But if I pursue it at a long-term relationship and it doesn't happen, then in my head the only logical response is everything negative I believe about myself is true.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I hope is a weird thing sometimes where it can help you to stay motivated, but in my case, it kind of also makes me afraid to try things because if that hope isn't realized, then what am I left with?
Right.
Emptiness and nothing.
Right.
So,
Yeah, and as you're talking, it was making me because I share a lot of the same thought processes that you do,
yeah.
and I shared, and I might have said this before on maybe a previous episode, but I want to bring it up again just because it seems like what's happening in my brain as you're explaining yourself is I talked with a coworker once about some of the same stuff about just feeling rejected and reaching out and maybe not getting what I need, and that I perpetually do that, right? I'm perpetually looking outside of myself to just sort of, and what on whatever level. It could be professionally, it could be with my writing, it could be even in relationships. And my coworker stopped and she kind of laughed and she goes, we're really opposite. She says, instead of worrying about whether or not, DJ, for me, I don't worry about whether or not I'm good enough for other people. I kind of think of it like, are they good enough for me?
Sure.
And when she said that, it's kind of like something flipped in my head. Like, she's right. Something. So why do I think that way? Number one,
Yeah.
which makes me go all the way down the rabbit hole of, oh, okay, it's because how I was raised, and so if I can just prove to myself that I am not good enough,
Yeah.
whether it be in relationships or finding a girlfriend, then I'm right.
Right.
And what is the big deal about us being right about something that makes us miserable?
Yeah, I have no idea.
Why is that?
Yeah.
Is it because we're afraid? Like, what are we afraid of? You know? And so you're talking about Match, and I was telling you that I have some male friends that have been on Match recently, and they kind of describe the same thing. Is they just never got any responses, and then one day the guy was about ready to deactivate it. He had 3 months left on his membership, and he got 2 replies, and one of the gals he ended up not marrying, but dating for quite a while. Um, and you know, you're not the only one in terms of males that are looking to find somebody
Right.
that are on internet dating sites that just aren't getting any play. And
Right.
whether it be eHarmony or whether it be like a Christian one,
Yeah.
it's just a matter of, again, 2 weeks. If this was 2 years
Right.
and you didn't get any responses after 2 years, it'd be like, okay, so let's go down that road.
Right.
Let's say it's 2 years from now, and you've soldiered through,
Yeah.
and you did not, and you've sent out, I don't know, 1,000 messages to people,
Yeah.
no reply. So we sit here 2 years later, and we say, okay, worst case scenario, something needs to probably change with me.
Right.
Kind of like, can I talk about the book thing?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like my book. So with my rejection that Dustin and I were talking about, is I've sent out maybe 10 queries in the last, I don't know, 3 weeks. And I've already gotten like 4 rejections, which is really kind of nothing. But if I send out 200 over the course of a year and I get rejections or no replies on all of them, then that means I probably need to change something.
Yeah.
Right? Whether it's the story, whether it's the way that I'm approaching the agent, right?
Sure.
So I guess if that's the worst case scenario, that's not horrible, right? I mean, it means we have to probably just change something.
Yeah. My only issue with that for me personally is my friends don't tell me I'm perfect. Obviously, I'm not. But I have some, whatever, people in my life that tell me that I would do well in a relationship. And nobody's ever said, well, you do well, but you could, do a little bit more of this or a little bit less of that. So now I'm to the point where I'm like, okay, are people lying to me because they want me to feel better? Or is there just something about me that doesn't come across in online dating that does in person? Yeah, that I don't know. That would be the tough thing. Like, I don't know if you've had anybody read your book and give you critiques on it, but it'd be the same thing if you had 20 people read it and go, like, no, this is a great book, and then it was constantly rejected. Then it'd be a little bit more difficult to accept that. Well, like, what do I need to change?
Well, and actually, this is a good alignment of rejection right now, because you're online, okay, and I'm online. We're online for different reasons, but for the same thing, is that we are looking to put ourselves out there, like our spirit. And in my case, it's my book. It's the work that I put in for this novel. In your case, it's Dustin. And it's Dustin's spirit. It's what Dustin has to offer the world, right? And so I know from and this is maybe same with Match, okay? I know that what I'm sending out to the world, it may not be the best fit for them at that time.
Sure.
Maybe they're looking for something that's shorter, right?
Sure.
Or maybe they're looking for something that, isn't as controversial.
Sure.
Maybe they don't like the writing. Maybe it's too flowery. Who
Yep.
knows? But that's that one person. So, and with same with you is if somebody's looking at your profile, reading your message, maybe they're like, you know what, this isn't the right fit for me. But that doesn't mean that you're not the right fit for somebody.
Right. Yeah, it's just hard to figure out, how much of yourself do you change and how much of yourself do you leave the same and wait for the right person or the right agent to come along? That's a really hard thing.
Right. And I'm not suggesting that you need to change. I'm thinking change in that you change your mentality about it, right?
Sure. Okay.
Or, you talk about, well, I want to lose weight,
Yep.
right? Well, maybe you fucking lose some weight.
Right.
Now, does that mean that that's going to attract a mate? Not necessarily. And I know you. I've been friends with you, what, for over a year now?
Yeah.
I mean, you're not a crazy guy. You're a good. I mean, you're not weird. You're not. You don't stalk. You're not. I mean, you have the same issues that other people, and not only that, you're so much more vulnerable and honest and insightful and self-aware that more so than most people I know. And so I know that it's just you just have to keep doing what you're doing.
Sure.
And if you read my book, you might come back and say, yeah, there's some things here. It's not like freaking, I don't know. I'm trying to think of that whale book that's considered the
Moby
best.
Dick.
Yeah, it's not Moby Dick, but it's a good book.
Right.
Keep at it,
Yep.
right? Um, and so I think there's just, like you said, I like when you mentioned soldiering on it because it truly is. It's kind of a battle. Um, with relationships, I know that some people uh, know that I'm in a relationship with somebody who's on the autism spectrum, and that has been very difficult at times,
Sure.
but it's also made me better.
Sure.
It's made me kind of question my ability to kind of be in a relationship. It's made me feel super needy, but at the same time, you just soldier on, and if you find that person that's willing to meet you halfway, it's better. But I was going to ask you more kind of about, I don't know, the rejection as it relates to this match stuff is when you don't get a response, how does that play out in terms of how does it impact your behaviors like during the day? Like, does it just totally depress you and then you just don't want to do anything or?
Yeah. So part part of my problem is I have impulse control issues. So once I start doing something, I want to succeed immediately, and I want to see instant results. And so the first week or so, every time I sent out a message, I had to fight the impulse to log on to Match every 20 minutes to see if the woman
Mm,
responded.
wow.
Because I just like, has
Sure.
she responded? Has she responded?
Kind
Has
of
she
like
responded?
texting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And the one relationship I had with a girl, it was the same thing when we first started dating. It was every time I sent a text and she didn't respond right away, it was just, well, why isn't she responding? Am I
Mm-hmm.
texting too much? Am I saying something stupid? Did
Did I
I?
make her mad?
Yeah. And so now this past week, I've been better about not um, being so obsessive about checking every 20 minutes, but now it's kind of shifted into that, well, geez, now I'm starting to see a pattern here that I'm sending out all these messages and I'm getting rejected. What the hell's going on with that?
Mm-hmm.
So it affects me the same amount, but because of different things. The first week it was impulse issues, and now the second week it's been more depression issues.
Um, for me, I would say it's been, and this is kind of how I am in life, anyways, is if I feel rejected, um, I I tend to isolate.
Okay.
So I think that's a pretty common reaction.
Yeah.
Is so I Dustin and I were talking before we went live with this, but one of the things that on my list of things to do this week was to send out more queries, and it's already Saturday, and I haven't done any.
Sure.
And some of that could be just being busy. Some of it could be attention deficit. Uh, but a lot of it is just like, I know it's gonna happen. I'm gonna send out these queries and I'm not gonna hear anything back, or I'm gonna get another rejection even though I've only got 4 so far.
Yeah.
But the reality is like you don't know until you just engage it and do it, and it's kind of part of the process.
Yeah.
You and I, it's easy because we're friends, but it's almost like the business of it's a business to sort of put ourselves out there, right?
Yep.
You have to be planful, you have to be intentional, you have to kind of have a strategy.
Yep.
When you're looking at these profiles, you have to kind of think, okay, like that's a good fit, or maybe that's not a good fit. All right, I'm going to reply to that person. What am I going to say, right? Same with what I'm going through is like, okay, this person is an agent, and so what am I going to say to them? And trying to kind of just that's hard for me. There's a business side of trying to put ourselves out there,
Yeah.
and it takes effort, and
Yeah.
it takes mindfulness, and you have to apply yourself. And for me, sometimes that's hard to do.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think for me, it when I'm facing that sort of rejection, I do the same kind of thing. I just want to hole up, just like turn inwards and not deal with the outside world. I want to like just go home and watch TV for 5 hours and binge on food. Or um, this past week, Thursday and Friday, I called into work because I'm just having a hard time with it. And work is frustrating for a few reasons, but yeah, a lot of it is just I don't want to deal with it. I don't.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard getting up every day. It's hard enough getting up every day and going through my normal life, but now adding this to it,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But I guess it's which is the greater evil, not pursuing a relationship and always wanting it, or pursuing a relationship and failing. I based on my actions right now, I'm saying that wanting a relationship and not pursuing it is the greater of the two evils.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe that changes in a week or two.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe in a couple weeks, I'm just like, you know what? It's switched. I can't do this right now, so I'll leave my match account activated. But I'm just not going to send out any messages for a couple weeks. Just kind of take a mental break from it.
Mm-hmm.
It it can it's a fluid situation in dealing with it.
Mm-hmm.
It's one day or one week I can handle it, the next day or the next week I can't, and then that doesn't necessarily define what the then following day or following week is. So it's I look at it like with my eating. If I have a bad day, that doesn't mean automatically that my next day has to be bad. Or if I have a bad
Right.
week, my
Right.
next week doesn't have to be bad. Each day each day should be its own thing that you deal with.
Right.
And hopefully you start to build some momentum, and you can start to make some positive changes and all that. But yeah, I agree. I do, like, I turn inward and I just want to like hole up in my room and not talk to anyone and not do anything.
Well, and some of this too, would you agree, is kind of expectations,
Yeah,
right? And expectations are just premeditated resentments.
sure.
And so what happens is for ourselves, we end up presenting ourselves because it's like, oh, I'm not good enough. My book isn't good enough, or maybe my personality isn't attractive enough for somebody,
Right.
or my physical appearance isn't. So we have this expectation of ourselves, and then we also have these expectations of others. And the thing that makes it so messy is that the others have the same of us and of themselves,
Yeah.
right? So it's this murky, messy sort of cadre of expectations and conditioning and fears, and because we all want the same thing, right? The
Yep.
people out there on Match, they kind of want the same thing too. They want to feel open and accepted and connected. Um, but again, it's kind of the right fit at the right time. I'm a big believer in timing.
Sure.
I feel like, as we talk about being fist-dented Christians, we were talking a little bit about, what God says about rejection, and in Judges 11:1 and 2, it talked this morning about how I don't remember the name, but somebody was run off.
Jephthah.
Jephthah or something like
Yeah.
that was run off of his land by because he was the son of a prostitute, and so he left and he ran away
Yeah.
instead of sort of trying to soldier through
Yeah.
and be accepted. He was actually rejected, and so he was sent out, and they ended up getting tangled up with a group of rebels, and so I feel like God, and I asked this to Dustin, and I'll ask our listeners too, is where are we going when we feel this way? How much is God part of that, and how much of it is just us and our own expectations, right?
Yeah.
And for me, and I'll be honest, and it kind of hit me this morning, is there's been no invitation to the Lord or to the Holy Spirit to come into my situation every day to kind of propel me forward in that, hey Lord, what do you want me to do with this today? Should I just have faith in you? Because I'm not. I don't have. I mean, I'm more thinking I have faith in DJ,
Sure.
because DJ was the one that's doing it. Dustin's the one that's on match, right? Where does God play into that? Well, come on, don't be stupid.
Right.
I mean, God has a hand in all of this. It's timing. It's going to the Lord each day and just being humbled and saying, hey, I'm not sure what you have in store for me, but I'm just going to be faith filled that you are going to be able to just carry me. I know this is happening for a reason. Listen, I'm older than you are, and I will tell you this, that it took me years to find my person.
Sure.
Years.
Yeah.
Now, what I could sit here and say that and lie and say that I knew that it was going to happen, but I didn't know it was going to happen.
Right.
And the way that it happened was basically on God's time. It was God's time. This person was somebody who I kind of, probably in the past had probably come into contact with after we had gotten to know each other. Like, yeah, we probably met each other at some point in time, but it's God's timing. And so if my book gets published or it doesn't get published, it's like, okay, Lord, this is your plan. Like, maybe you don't want me to be doing this. I don't know, but I'm just gonna have faith that you're with me, or I'm gonna have faith that eventually somebody's gonna be the right fit. The timing's gonna be right. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with that. Again, I've said on this podcast before, there's intellectual, you can know things intellectually and you can know things emotionally, and it's what you intellectually know versus what you experience as reality. And for those listening that don't know, I started my own website, and I'm for just anything that I'm interested in, I read books and then I make blog posts on it. And I've been investigating what I think about God blessing gay marriage. And one of the things that constantly kind of came up in my mind before reading the books was Paul in Romans talks about people should be single because it allows them to devote the most time to the kingdom. But God only gifts celibacy to certain people, so it's better to be married than to burn with lust. So I think about that for myself, and I think when I first heard that, when I became a Christian, like my own faith, choosing my own faith, I instantly, because of my negativity and pessimism, I'm like, well, God wants me to be alone. Then I'm going to be one of those people. But now it's to the point I'm like, no, I'm one of those people that probably should be married. I do better when I'm in relationships than when I'm not. So then I get frustrated because I'm very sure that I should be in a relationship, but it's God's timing, and I've been super lonely for a while now, and there's no there's no light at the end of the tunnel that I'm making progress towards being in a relationship or towards marriage. And so yeah, God's timing is great and all, but it's like I don't want to. Who likes to have to suffer?
Mm-hmm.
So I have a hard time with that. Where
Mm-hmm.
again, I agree with it, but
And we've talked about that before, where you agree with it, but yeah, it's hard to
yeah,
why? So okay, like okay, I get that in theory,
right,
but emotionally,
yep. So that's kind of where I'm at. Where it's like, all right, um, I believe I'm the type of person that would do best being married, and I'm 36, and I've been dealing with loneliness for a long time. And not like I said, when I was 24, 25, yeah, I wanted a relationship, but it didn't bother me on a deep level on a
mm-hmm,
day-to-day basis. It's
mm-hmm.
been bothering me on a deep level on a day-to-day basis for quite some time now. So at some point, I'm like, it's the whole adage of, well, God never gives you more than you can handle. And I'm just like, well, great, another platitude that I can deal with
Right.
in life. And it just, all of that shit just drives me nuts. And because I don't know what to do with it. And part of the problem that I run into is I, I have a number of friends that had an incredibly lucky or miraculous experience with dating. And, for privacy's sake, I won't say names, but I have plenty of friends that married the first person they dated
Mm,
or married the second person they
mm-hmm,
dated. And
mm-hmm,
they've been married since they were 24 or
mm-hmm,
25. It's just like, well, what the fuck? How
mm-hmm.
come they get that? And me, who deals with depression and anxiety, I can't find someone right away, but somebody that doesn't deal with mental health issues that could soldier on easier than I could, they don't have to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
So what the hell's that about?
Oh, so wait a second. So are you the only person that struggles from depression and anxiety that can't be in a relationship?
No,
Okay.
no, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is I have people in my life that don't deal with that stuff
Mm-hmm.
that got a relationship right away.
Yeah, but there's not. Yeah, but there's no. I mean, so what? It's not that you can't be depressed and anxiety. To
Right.
okay.
Right. I'm just saying it that's part of the frustrating part is person A over there is pretty mentally healthy and could fight
Mm.
and didn't have
Oh, I
to.
see what you're saying.
Me, I'm not good at soldiering on and I have to.
Mm-hmm.
So that plays into it where it's just like, boy God, your timing sure is fucking
Mm.
weird,
Mm-hmm.
So um
All right.
so but yeah, so it's just something that and with your book, like how many people are worse writers than you that have gotten published right away? And you're just like, well, what the hell?
Right. And it's so funny you say that because there's a lot of worse writers than me that have gotten their books published.
You
I
know,
mean, and I'm not to toot my own self too much, but I'm a good writer. I'm a good storyteller,
yeah,
and I'm a good. And it's kind of a blessing and a curse. I look at the world, and I see stories everywhere.
yeah,
I see narratives. I see things just differently than most people, and so I try to take all that stuff in my head and then put it down on paper. Um, and that's awesome. But at the same time, it gets me in trouble. But you're right. There's a lot of books out there that are just crap.
yeah.
Um, I try not to get caught up in that because it's like, okay. Matter of fact, what I what I do is I'm like, if this can get published, right?
You know what? It's funny you mentioned that, and I know we're a little over our, we're a couple minutes over our half hour, but that's one of the things that really pushed me to get on Match is I look at every person that I know reasonably well, and I think of all the goofiness that goes on in their lives and they're still in relationships. Why not me?
Right.
Why can't, like, yeah, I have some things that are worse than others, but
Yeah.
I have some things that are better than
Yeah.
others.
If that guy can be in a relationship,
Right.
yeah.
So yeah, I that's that's kind of flipping back to what you said about the woman at work. That's kind of trying to flip that
Yeah.
instead of worrying about what do I have to
Right.
offer,
Right.
worrying about
What they, yeah.
what others have to offer, or I only have this, a little bit to offer. Well, if I look at a bunch of other people, most other people maybe only have a little bit to offer. And so if they have a little bit to offer and can have a relationship, why can't I?
Right. So I would suggest that this week, everybody that's listening, is we jettison off of that ledge of, well, instead of me worrying about whether I'm good enough for others, maybe I should start worrying about whether or not they're good enough for me.
Right.
Because it's true.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not. Here's the thing: is you're not just going to jump at the very first. What if some? I mean, what if somebody does reply to you and you're
Yeah.
like, I have zero interest in this person,
Right.
right? I
Yep.
mean, you have standards and you have desires of what you want.
Yep.
Why don't you focus on that rather
Yeah.
than just, oh, I need somebody to validate me? Because I'm
Right.
doing that too. It's like I've thought that already. And I know we're over, but okay, what am I going to do when I get the first kind of maybe second layer agent that wants to represent me? What do I do? Well, first of all, I'm going to be super excited,
Yep.
right? But then I have to stop and like discern, like, is this a good fit for me?
Yep.
I sent out 75. I got one reply. Do I go with that one? But they're just maybe they're not the best fit, but I go with them.
Right.
So this week, I would say everybody, you're going to deal with rejection. Just be mindful of it. Be
Yep.
mindful that it's going to happen. Be mindful of how it makes you feel emotionally. Realize that the Lord is with us. The Lord is faithful to us, even in our depression and anxiety, even when we feel like we got the short end of the stick. Just keep soldiering on, and we'll see you again next week.
All right. Thanks, DJ.